Everyone in the UK knows about the Great Train Robbery. But this is the story of another heist, just a few years later, that was even bigger. A heist so sensitive that the British government is said to have issued a gag order, trying to erase it from the public record. This is the story of the Baker Street Bank robbery, and the theory that the thieves found more than just money, they found a secret that could have shaken the British monarchy. Our story begins in 1970. A man named Anthony Tony Gavin, an experienced photographer and criminal, was reading a Sherlock Holmes story called The Red-Headed League. In it, criminals tunnel into a bank vault from a shop next door. For Gavin, this was not just fiction, it was a plan. In the early 1970s, London banks were protected by thick concrete and steel, not the digital alarms we have today. Gavin saw an opportunity. He started putting together a team. But first, they needed a map of the inside. This is where Reginald Reg Tucker came in. Tucker had no criminal record, which made him the perfect person to walk into their target, the Lloyds Bank on Baker Street. In December 1970, Tucker opened an account with a £500 deposit. Then, in February 1971, he rented a safe deposit box inside the vault. Over the next few months, Tucker visited his box 13 times. He wasn't checking on valuables. His real job was reconnaissance. He used his umbrella to measure the room's dimensions. He counted floor tiles and estimated distances, creating a mental map of the vault. This map would be their guide. With the vault's layout understood, the team moved to the next phase. In the spring of 1971, another member of the gang, Benjamin Wolfe, rented a leather goods shop called Le Sac, just 2 doors down from the bank. The plan was to dig a tunnel from the shop's basement, go under the chicken-in restaurant in between, and come up through the floor of the bank vault. For the next 3 months, the gang worked mostly on weekends, when the noise of their digging would be less noticeable. They dug a 40-foot-long tunnel through the London soil. It was back-breaking work. While people walked along the busy streets of Baker Street above, a team of men was secretly digging its way toward a fortune. On the night of Saturday, September 11, 1971, the plan went into action. The gang entered Le Sac for the final part of the job. A lookout was positioned on a nearby rooftop with a walkie-talkie, watching the street for any sign of trouble. Down in the tunnel, they had one last obstacle, the vault floor, made of 3 feet of reinforced concrete. They first tried a hydraulic jack to punch a hole through it, but that failed. They then tried a thermic lance, which also failed. With time running out, they switched to a hammer and chisel. To break through the final section, they used small explosive charges, timing the blasts with the noise of passing traffic to hide the sound. Finally, they were inside. They had created a hole just big enough for a person to climb through. For the next day and a half, they were undisturbed. They broke into 268 safe deposit boxes, emptying them of cash, jewelry, and documents. The value of everything they took was estimated to be between £1.25 and £3 million, which would be tens of millions in today's money. Before they left, they wrote a message on the vault wall: "Let's see how Sherlock Holmes solves this one." Around 11 p.m. that Saturday night, an amateur radio enthusiast named Robert Rowlands was at his home, scanning the radio frequencies. Suddenly, he heard a conversation that caught his attention. It was a group of men on walkie-talkies, sounding both nervous and excited. They were talking about their progress, mentioning a lookout and needing to take a break. Rowlands realized he was listening to a robbery. He grabbed a cassette recorder and started taping the conversation. Then he called the police. At first, the police were skeptical, but Rowlands insisted they listen to his recording. By 2 a.m. Sunday morning, Scotland Yard was alerted that a major bank robbery was happening somewhere in London. The only problem was, they didn't know which bank. Based on the likely range of the walkie-talkies, the police determined the robbery was taking place within an 8-mile radius. In that area were 750 different bank branches. A huge operation began, with officers sent to check every single bank. Around 3:30 that afternoon, police officers arrived at the Lloyds Bank on Baker Street. They checked the doors and looked through the windows. Everything seemed secure. The vault itself had a time lock and couldn't be opened until Monday morning. With no sign of a break-in from the outside, the officers reported the bank as secure and moved on. They had missed the crime by just a few feet and a few hours. It wasn't until the bank opened on Monday that the staff found the hole in the floor and the ransacked vault. The robbers were gone. The story was huge. A multi-million-pound heist in the middle of London. The newspapers called it the Walkie-Talkie Bank Job. For a couple of days, it was the biggest story in the country. Then, suddenly, the story disappeared from the headlines. This is where the story of a crime becomes something more. The official story faded, and rumors began to fill the silence. The reason, it's often said, was a denotice, a formal government request to news editors to stop reporting on a story for reasons of national security. Bank robberies, even big ones, don't usually get this kind of attention. So the question that has never been fully answered is, why? Why was this particular story considered so sensitive? The most persistent theory is that the robbers found something other than cash and jewels. The rumor is that inside one of the safe deposit boxes were compromising photographs of a prominent member of the royal family. At that time, safe deposit boxes were used by powerful people to store things they wanted to keep private. Some have speculated the entire robbery was a front, an operation by British intelligence like MI5 to secretly retrieve those sensitive items. Was the denotice, if it was issued, meant to protect the bank's reputation, or the Crown's? This theory is fueled by the claim that many official government files on the robbery are sealed at the National Archives and will not be declassified until the year 2071. For a regular criminal case, that level of secrecy is unusual. It suggests there may be something in those files the government does not want the public to see. While the press went quiet, Scotland Yard continued its investigation. The gang had left behind their digging and cutting tools, and investigators collected over 800 items of forensic evidence. The lease for the shop was traced back to Benjamin Wolfe. Informants started talking. Slowly, the police identified the members of the gang. Eventually, Tony Gavin, Reg Tucker, Benjamin Wolfe, and another man named Thomas Stevens were arrested. They were found guilty at trial. Gavin, Tucker, and Stevens were sentenced to 12 years in prison, while Wolfe, who was in his 60s, received 8 years. But it was not a complete success for the police. Of the millions stolen, only about £231,000 was ever recovered. Several key members of the gang, including the lookout and the electronics expert, were never caught. They disappeared, along with almost all of the stolen money and whatever secrets might have been found in that vault. The Baker Street Bank job remains a story of incredible planning and lasting mystery. We know how they did it, and we know who was convicted. But the official story feels incomplete. The critical questions are still there. Why did the story vanish from the news? What was in the hundreds of safe deposit boxes that was so important? And why are the government files on the case said to be sealed for a century? Was it just a robbery for money, so audacious that it was silenced to prevent copycat crimes? Or did this gang of criminals accidentally uncover a secret so big that the entire event had to be buried? The full truth, it seems, remains locked away. What do you think really happened? Was this a simple heist or something much bigger? Let me know your theories in the comments. And if you want to explore more forgotten mysteries, make sure to subscribe.